We're still monitoring the situation over at Madison, Wisconsin, but for the meantime, we do want to segue to some other of these top headlines that we have been following throughout this week. It's only Monday, but there's so many big stories that we'd like to touch on. I'd like to give you a live look right now over in Times Square, New York City. That's where we're heading for this next part of this segment, because I do want to touch a little bit on the suspect accused in the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Well, that suspect now has new representation. Luigi Mangione has enlisted the help of prominent defense attorney Karen Friedman Nufillo in his murder trial. But how could this affect how the trial plays out going forward? Well, for more on that, we're going to be joined now by former federal prosecutor, president of West Coast Lawyers, Neama Rahmani. Neama, always good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so break it down for the viewers. Who is Karen Friedman? Why is she such a high-profile lawyer?
Well, she's very high profile because she was the chief assistant district attorney in Manhattan under Alvin Bragg. And of course, that is the prosecutor who's going to be handling this case, especially because the defendant has now waived extradition, which means that he's going to be moved from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested on gun charges, to New York, where he was facing and is facing the more serious murder charges. Now, it's just second-degree murder for now, but I fully expect him to be charged with first-degree premeditated murder. And when it comes to extradition, obviously that was just a mere formality because it's really a question of identity. Is Luigi Mangione the person named in the New York arrest warrant? If so, he would have to be extradited. It's very different when you're talking about extradition between states opposed to extradition between different countries to the United States.
Okay, speaking a little bit more here to the fact that Friedman going to be the defense in this case, going up against the prosecutor there, the district attorney, Alvin Bragg. What kind of approach, Neama, do you think that Karen Friedman is going to take when trying to defend this case?
It's going to be a very difficult case to defend because there's a lot of evidence that puts him at the scene, and of course, the defendant's own admissions. But with respect to the evidence, we've all seen the video of what appears to be the defendant shooting Brian Thompson. And then there was the eyewitness that's also in the video. I don't know how much she saw, how helpful she'll be, but it's really that forensic evidence. There is the burner phone, that cell site evidence that was discarded near the scene. There's Mangione's DNA on that water bottle that he bought from Starbucks. Again, near the scene. His fingerprints reportedly on that cell phone. And of course, it's his manifesto. I think that's probably going to be the most damaging. These are his own statements where he talks about his motivation for this killing. So, on the flip side, I've never seen in my more than 20 years of prosecuting cases, defending cases, representing victims, I've never seen an accused murderer receive so much sympathy. Some of it, of course, is just general distrust and people who are unhappy with the health insurance industry. But you have someone who comes from a wealthy family, is reportedly very smart, admittedly good looking, and now famous. And there's a lot of folks on traditional and social media that support him. So this is the type of case that if you're prosecuting presents a very real risk of jury nullification. Jury nullification, of course, is a juror or a set of jurors that even though they believe that Mangione is guilty, he's responsible for this murder, they decide to acquit anyway. So I think that would be my biggest concern if I'm prosecuting this case.
I want to bring us out back out live to Times Square in New York. And Neama, wanting to talk a little bit more about Mangione's defense attorney here and kind of some family background, if you will. So Friedman's husband and law partner is Mark Agnifilo, who is representing Sean Diddy Combs in his federal sex trafficking case. We're talking about two very high-profile cases that are going to be underway, these trials over in New York City. Can you speak to us a little bit about maybe some of the achievements with this duo, a little more about their work together even?
Talk about a power couple. We're talking about a husband and wife, Karen and Mark, two of the most prominent defense attorneys in the country, and who are now handling what I believe are the two biggest criminal cases in the country. Certainly the two cases that have gotten the most attention. especially now that Donald Trump's legal problems have gone away because he's been reelected and he's president-elect. So obviously, we know the Diddy case is going to go to trial because I can't see Diddy taking any type of deal. And frankly, he has the financial means to afford lawyers uh, like Mark. And obviously, we know that Luigi Mangione's family, at least, is very well off. Now, I don't know what he's going to do, if he's going to take some sort of deal or he's going to push his case to trial, but he's digging his heels in, at least so far, by hiring who would probably be considered, at least on one hand, the number or a number of the best defense attorneys in New York City that are very familiar with the district attorney's office there and handling these types of cases, both as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer. They have a lot of experience. So, really, the DA's office, they're going to be, have their hands full with someone like Karen Friedman handling this case.
So Neema, you spoke a little bit about, some of the evidence that is there against Mangione within this case, but I want to ask you, as a former federal prosecutor yourself, you're taking a look at this case based off of what we know so far, what's been reported. How would you stack the cards for yourself in order for you to get a conviction? In other words, really, what is the prosecution going to do?
Well, I think the prosecution is going to focus on jury selection because if they weed out those sympathetic jurors, I think they have a very clear path to a conviction here. And I think there's plenty of evidence that Luigi Mangione did this. And, it's going to be a question of how is he going to take this case? We haven't had many glimpses of him in court so far. Obviously, there are no cameras allowed in New York, even in state courts. So we're not going to see that. But while he was being transported to the initial appearance in Pennsylvania, he was yelling about the American public and them not being stupid or misled. So is he going to take a very sort of politicized approach to defending this case? Is he going to rail out against UnitedHealthcare and health insurers? Will the judge even allow it? Or is this going to be a case that they play straight up normally, where he's going to keep his mouth shut and he's going to let his lawyers do the lawyering? I mean, the challenge is, here's someone that has been pretty active in what he said. I mean, obviously, all this information is coming out, his social media posts, his manifesto, and even comments on Michael Moore's Sicko, for instance, a documentary on the healthcare industry. I mean, all this information is coming out, and it all will be used against him at trial. And if you're talking about what prosecutors like myself look for when I was a prosecutor, we look for motive, means, and opportunity, and it's all there. The motive is there; it's all spelled out. The means, we've caught it on video. I mean, how often do you catch a murder on video in broad daylight in Midtown Manhattan? And the opportunity, I think that all that information is going to come out. How he traveled via bus from Atlanta to New York City, how he escaped through Central Park, how he made his way to Pennsylvania, how maybe he was trying to flee the country. I don't know. He had a lot of cash and obviously different forms of ID on him. I think all that information is going to come out in the coming days and weeks, and I think it's going to be very difficult to defend this case, no matter how good of a defense lawyer you are.
Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. We always appreciate your time here at Live Now from Fox. And there's still so much that we need to learn about how this trial is really going to play out. We're still waiting for Mangione to get back to New York. So, of course, we'll be checking in with you and see kind of how this develops.
Thanks for having me, as always. We're going to be tracking this case closely.
Of course. You take care.